The courtroom was silent, but Marcus felt as if the walls themselves were pressing in on him. He sat rigidly at the defendant's table, his lawyer whispering last-minute notes he barely heard. His eyes were fixed on Claire. She looked radiant, almost triumphant, in her tailored navy dress, her lips curved in a cruel smile that never seemed to fade. When the judge read the final settlement, Marcus felt his chest tighten. His company, gone. His penthouse in the city, the vacation villa in Spain, the luxury cars, the majority of his liquid accounts, all awarded to Claire. She had stripped him bare, leaving him with one single property, the crumbling mansion on Millstone Hill. Claire tilted her head, her laugh cutting through the stillness of the courtroom like glass shattering. That dump. He can keep it, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. It's worth less than the mold growing on its walls. The crowd chuckled, and Marcus felt the heat of humiliation rising up his neck. But instead of reacting, instead of letting the anger pour out, he lowered his gaze and breathed deeply. He had learned long ago that silence could be sharper than words. To the world, it looked like he had lost everything. A broken man, betrayed and ruined by the woman he had once loved. Claire thought she had destroyed him, and perhaps, in that moment, she truly believed it. What no one in that courtroom knew, not the judge, not the lawyers, not even Claire herself, was that Marcus had always been 3 steps ahead. Years earlier, when his business had first begun to explode with success, he had purchased the old Millstone Hill estate. It was massive, but forgotten by time. Most saw only decay, peeling wallpaper, dust-choked chandeliers, and hallways that smelled of damp stone and abandonment. To Marcus, however, it was more than a relic of wealth. It was an opportunity. Back then, Claire had scoffed when he signed the deed. Why waste money on that ruin, she had mocked. We should be investing in real estate people actually want to live in. Marcus only smiled at her, concealing his true intent. For years, he had funneled resources into restoring parts of the mansion, not with new furniture or cosmetic upgrades, but with reinforced vaults, hidden rooms, and layers of security only he understood. Beneath its cracked floors and behind its faded walls lay something no divorce court could ever touch, his fortress. And inside that fortress, a fortune, cash sealed in climate-controlled vaults, gold bars stacked like bricks, rare jewels resting in velvet cases. Art pieces that hadn't seen the public eye in decades leaned against forgotten corridors. Everything was hidden so cleverly, so discreetly, that even the most determined investigator would have assumed the place was worthless. In court, however, all anyone saw was the image Claire painted, a broken husband with nothing left but a haunted house. She relished it. As the gavel struck, she leaned toward him one last time, her perfume sweet and suffocating. "You'll never rise again, Marcus," she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. "You'll rot in that mansion until it collapses on top of you." For a long moment, Marcus stared at her, his face unreadable. His silence unnerved her more than if he had shouted. Finally, he stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and left the courtroom without a word. Outside, flashes from reporters' cameras blinded him. "Mr. Whitmore, how do you feel about losing everything? Do you plan to rebuild? Was Claire responsible for the company's downfall?" Marcus ignored them all. Each question was a dagger, but none could pierce him now. He stepped into the back of a waiting car, his driver closing the door behind him. Through the tinted glass, he caught one last glimpse of Claire on the courthouse steps, basking in the attention, waving to reporters as if she were a celebrity. Her laughter still rang in his ears. But deep inside, beneath the sting of betrayal and the weight of public disgrace, Marcus felt something else rising, something quiet, powerful, and dangerous. Satisfaction. Because what Claire thought was his ruin was, in truth, the beginning of her undoing. That night, he returned to Millstone Hill. The drive was long and winding, the mansion sitting isolated on a ridge above the town. Clouds hung low, and the structure loomed out of the mist like a ghost. The locals called it cursed, a relic of another era. Windows were cracked, ivy strangled the stone walls, and one of the gates sagged on broken hinges. But when Marcus stepped inside, the scent of dust and age gave way to something else. The air was cool and clean in certain halls, the floors sturdy where he had reinforced them. Past the peeling paint and broken banisters lay hidden doors and underground passages, invisible to the untrained eye. He walked through the grand foyer, his footsteps echoing on marble floors. In the eyes of the world, this was a mausoleum of failure. But to him, it was home, his sanctuary, his war chest, his secret waiting to be revealed. And as he descended into the first hidden vault, brushed his hand over stacks of sealed crates filled with wealth beyond imagination, Marcus allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Claire thought she had won, but she had only freed him from the chains he had once let her hold. The game had only just begun. The days that followed were heavy with silence. The old mansion on Millstone Hill groaned with every gust of wind, its broken shutters rattling like ghosts of the past. For Marcus, it wasn't just a house. It was a reminder of what the world thought he had been reduced to. Claire had taken the company, the penthouse in the city, the cars, even the vacation homes abroad. To the public, he was nothing but a man stripped bare. But every evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon and his daughter Amara curled up in bed under blankets too big for her small frame, Marcus disappeared into the bowels of the mansion. Behind a false wall in the cellar, hidden from any lawyer's eyes, lay a vault of his own design. Years earlier, when success had first blessed him, he distrusted its fragility. He remembered his father's words, "Never keep all your wealth where others can see it. Hide some for the day they try to take everything from you." Marcus had taken those words to heart. And so, while Claire had reveled in buying luxury handbags and throwing galas, Marcus had quietly transformed his worthless mansion into a fortress. Beneath the cracked plaster and sagging ceilings lay steel-reinforced rooms, humidity-controlled chambers, and safes stacked with untraceable wealth, gold bars wrapped in cloth, rare jewels sealed in cases, and millions in cash. But Marcus wasn't driven by greed anymore. Each night, as he sorted through his reserves, he thought of Amara. She was too young to understand betrayal, too innocent to grasp how her mother's laughter in that courtroom had cut him deeper than any knife. But Marcus knew his daughter deserved a future untouched by Claire's venom. Meanwhile, Claire's empire began to show cracks. At first, it was whispers in the business pages, her flashy spending, her reckless decisions. The company she had won was bloated, over-leveraged, dependent on Marcus's steady hand. Without him, contracts faltered, partnerships frayed, and investors grew restless. Marcus kept his distance. He stayed hidden in plain sight, appearing to be just another man licking his wounds. When neighbors saw him at the local market with Amara, carrying groceries in worn paper bags, they pitied him. Some even snickered. Marcus didn't mind. The quieter he remained, the less anyone suspected. But in the stillness of the mansion, he was planning. Amara often sat at his side at night, while he worked at a long oak desk covered in maps and documents. She would draw with crayons, glancing up at him with curious eyes. "Daddy," she asked once, "why do people say we're poor now?" Marcus paused, lowering his pen. He knelt beside her, brushing her curls from her face. "We're not poor, sweetheart. We just live differently now. Sometimes people don't see the truth right away, but you will. One day soon." Amara tilted her head, smiling the way children do when they trust without question. "I believe you." Those words burned into him like fire. He couldn't fail her, not after everything. As the weeks passed, Marcus began quietly rebuilding his network. Old friends reached out, offering sympathy, not knowing he still had the means to back entire ventures. He listened, observed, and waited. When the time was right, he would step back into the world, not as the broken man Claire believed she had destroyed, but as a force greater than ever. One evening, as thunder rolled across the hills, Marcus stood before the vault with Amara sleeping upstairs. He ran his hand across the stacks of gold, the untouched treasures that only he knew existed. In the shadows, his reflection in the steel door looked back at him, not defeated, but sharpened. He whispered to himself, "Patience. Timing is everything." And far away in the city, Claire raised her glass at another lavish party, blind to the storm that was building on the horizon. Months slipped by like shadows on the mansion walls. What once looked like ruin now pulsed with quiet purpose. Marcus had transformed the dusty halls into a war room. Behind its faded curtains and creaking floors, he was no longer the man the world thought broken. He was sharpening his blade in silence. Every morning he walked Amara to school, dressed simply, blending in with ordinary fathers. Other parents whispered about the fallen millionaire who had been left with nothing but an old house. Amara ignored them. She held her father's hand proudly, never doubting the strength in his stride. She didn't know the scale of his secret, but she could feel his certainty. Meanwhile, Claire's empire began to unravel in plain view. The papers that once celebrated her victory now mocked her recklessness. Headlines screamed of lawsuits, unpaid debts, and investors pulling out. Her once mighty company teetered on collapse. But Claire, blinded by arrogance, refused to admit it. At her core, Claire believed Marcus was ruined. She laughed when mutual acquaintances told her they'd seen him buying groceries with coupons or fixing a broken fence by hand. Let him rot in that shack, she scoffed, pouring herself another glass of champagne in her penthouse suite. But beneath the surface, Marcus was already moving. He started small, discreet investments through shell companies, quietly funding startups, acquiring undervalued properties, positioning himself in industries ready to explode. His vault of hidden wealth wasn't just sitting idle, it was multiplying. Like seeds planted in the soil, his fortune began to bloom in secret. By the time Claire realized the depth of her troubles, Marcus was already untouchable. The turning point came at a charity gala in the city, a place Claire attended to save face, draped in diamonds she could barely afford. The ballroom was a spectacle of glittering lights, champagne fountains, and forced laughter. Whispers chased her as she walked, rumors of bankruptcy, of betrayal, of a queen losing her crown. And then the room fell quiet. Marcus entered, not in tattered clothes, not as the broken man she imagined, but in a tailored suit, with Amara walking beside him in a little white dress, holding his hand. His presence shifted the air itself. Men straightened their ties. Women turned their heads. The whispers turned into stunned silence. Claire froze, the smile on her face cracking. Marcus greeted people warmly, effortlessly. CEOs, politicians, investors who had once written him off now leaned in eagerly, seeking his attention. His return wasn't desperate. It was commanding. He didn't just come back. He arrived as if he had never left. When Claire finally approached, clutching a half-empty glass, her voice shook despite her attempt at mockery. "So you're alive after all. Did you win the lottery?" Marcus studied her for a moment. He could see the fear behind her eyes, the panic of a woman watching her empire burn. Slowly he smiled. "No, Claire. I built everything back myself. While you were busy spending, I was preparing. That mansion you laughed at?" He leaned closer, his voice calm, almost gentle. "It was never a ruin. It was my fortress." Her glass trembled in her hand. The truth spread faster than wildfire. Within weeks, the world knew. Marcus was not just back. He was stronger, richer, more powerful than before. The very fortune Claire thought she had stripped away had been reborn, shielded from her greed. Meanwhile, her empire collapsed under its own weight. The penthouse, the cars, the yachts, all sold off to pay debts she couldn't control. Claire, who once laughed in a courtroom, now sat in silence in a rented apartment, her name whispered with pity instead of envy. Marcus, however, had no time for revenge. His focus was Amara. Together, they restored the mansion, not into the crumbling shell it had been, but into a home filled with life. Its halls echoed not with ghosts, but with laughter, music, and dreams. One evening, as the sun set over Millstone Hill, Marcus stood on the balcony with Amara at his side. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Daddy," she said softly, "are we rich now?" Marcus chuckled, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Yes, Amara. But more than rich, we're free." And for the first time in years, Marcus felt it. Freedom, victory, and the sweet, quiet justice of watching the world see the truth for itself. The man they thought destroyed had risen. And this time, nothing could tear him down.